voice go wah 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 wah
Do that
wah
every
wah
week.
wah.
Hey, welcome back.
Thanks, man. You talking to me?
And
You're
everyone
Here
listening.
all the time.
You're talking to Brian Phipps because is he regular contributor yet? It's close. It's at least number 2.
The second one we've had you
keep
on.
sending in my requests via mail. Do y'all not answer your mail? Like, can I please get on the Underground podcast? I want to be cool like everybody else.
What is mail?
See, back in the day.
Email? No, that's kind of dead too, right?
Mm-hmm.
People keep saying that, and I'm like, email is not dead. There's a lot of emailing that happens. It might be dead for Cory.
Oh yeah, it just has its role. That's all
right.
It is. It's just all these different. It has its own way, but you know what? I don't like that way.
No, you don't.
I don't. I'll do it just enough. It's kind of like mowing my grass. Like I'll do it just enough not to make people mad, but not enough for me to care.
I got it.
Yeah.
All right. So here we are. This is the second episode in this series within a series on coaching disciple-making leaders to pursue their God-given goals. Last week, we got to interview Sarah Jackaway. It was amazing. Great interview. This week, we get to hang with our I don't know what to call you.
I think the wrong things just came to my mind, and maybe yours too.
Brian Phipps. That feels weird. Our dear friend, Brian Phipps. So Brian is actually on the board of the Kansas City Underground. Man, I've learned so much. The number of times in the last week that I have shown people outcome focused, habit fueled, content flavored, man, it's coming back for me. It's like, I think it's so internal now. I think that way, but like helping others like see that Venn diagram and how important that is. It's been so good. So anyway, Brian Phipps, we're glad you're here because we think you're going to bring a lot to the table on a conversation about coaching disciple-making leaders. Mm-hmm. So let's, you good?
I'm great, man.
Awesome.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
Good. I had to get some water.
Yeah.
So I'm back.
I just want to, we just want to hear, who are you? It's been a minute since we've had you on the podcast. So give us a little background.
I am a grandpa.
Hey,
two amazing young kiddos that I love, Hazel and Denver. Our oldest, Hannah, has those 2 kids, and proud father of 3. So Hannah with the grandkids, and then Sam, who's married to a wonderful Madison, and Caleb, who is in his 3rd year, will be going into his 3rd year, studying biochem with a minor in engineering. So obviously he got his brain from not me. Philosophy, theology, that kind of stuff. Okay, I can maybe hang with some people, but he's just too smart. And we've got a good week this week. They're on summer break, obviously, and his girlfriend is up. She also wants to go to dental school, so we're just real pleased. I'm a big family man. Love the fam. Been married 30 years this year. Need to plan a big Europe trip so that I can go to England and see some of my family's roots, and go to Holland to see some of hers. So we're going to do like a month. We're going to
good for you, man.
A lifetime trip next spring. So if you want to come rob my house, next spring's a good time. So I won't tell you.
Right on. Yeah, if you just want to throw out your address here. Just so
security number, mother's maiden name.
Well, congratulations, Grandpa Phipps, man. I like that. That's what forever you shall be known.
Grandpa
as
Phipps.
Grandpa Phipps.
Papa's the name. Papa.
That's what my kids call me.
Apparently, Abba was taken and Lord were taken.
All right, Abba Phipps. If you could give us, like, you lead a ministry, a national organization. Tell us about Disciples Made.
Disciples Made is a, like you said, just a not-for-profit ministry that gets to focus exclusively on multiplication, disciple making and multiplication. Was birthed out of a little movement of disciple making that happened in a large church that you and I were both a part of here in Kansas City. That became such the item of focus and joy that the church, for me, became people who want to make this happen. People who were disciples but got really mobilized and started to share ownership of the Great Commission instead of just kind of go to a church that kind of accomplished the Great Commission itself, as an organization. They saw that as an individual ownership. Those people are the people I want to serve and pastor. And so this became the full-time opportunity 6 years ago. And so we host an app called the Fully Alive by Disciples Made app that people are from anywhere in the world are coming on and asking questions about Jesus and then growing in their faith and reaching others.
All right, let's do that one a little deeper. Like Fully Alive, how did that come about? Why is that kind of the driving force behind DM?
Because if Jesus said, I came that you might have life, and we're not all the way there yet, there's a gap between who we are and who we could be. And we want to help people fill that gap. I mean, to me, living fully, the process of discipleship is helping people close the gap between where they are and what Jesus means, whatever he means by fully alive in John 10:10. And I have a strong theory about that, but I'll just start at that high level right there.
I know. I kind of want to hear more about that theory.
That's him saying. So when he mails us later,
exactly.
Hey, where do people that are listening, where do they find more about Fully Alive?
Fully Alive by Disciples Made in the Apple Store or Google Store. Just search for that and you'll find it. And accounts are free. When you if you ever get to the point where you want to start leading our influence level, like how to coach others is what the influence level type of resources are. That's when there starts a subscription wall. I hate that we have a subscription wall. We have to fund this thing for a while. Most people, when they experience that level, realize we could sell it for a whole lot more. But we want our partnerships. We don't want clients. And so we just see that as a first step in partnering with you to change the world, help people live fully alive.
All right. You got questions? Because I got questions.
Of course I got questions, but we'll let you start. Do your thing.
All right, cool. So Phipps and I get to hang a lot together. Not as much as we did, but we like hanging together. So I know a good bit about Disciples Made. I know the work that you're doing, Fully Alive. We could talk multiple generations of disciple making that you've seen. Let's talk about it in your own life and really get into this idea of coaching. So, like backstory here, the underground was like, as Brian mentioned, we're on staff at the same church, and a lot of the early kind of learning environments that we're helping people in, like if you're watching this behind Phipps, you can see Missionaries Made on the wall there. That was this early learning community teaching people how to live the blessed rhythms, still going on. You can find that in the Fully Alive app. But like the principles behind how we coach people into this is we're helping them determine like what are the outcomes for which you're aiming, what are the habits that are fueling those outcomes, and then what's the content that fuels your habits that leads to those outcomes. And then as we were coaching people in the blessed rhythms, we're seeing these spiritual transformation happen in people's lives, but they're not finding their way into a building. It's just becoming more integrated into their life. And you were really influencing a lot of those early learning environments, the DNA of Disciples Made. So I just want to hear a little bit, the other little piece of back information there. Like we've interviewed Bree Weeby on the podcast, one of the directors of the Underground. Bree was like, what was she in relationship to you? I mean, you were like a coach to Bree who was developing coaching, right?
Yeah, I was technically her supervisor, but coaching is way more fun than being a supervisor. So I can't wait to mark a distinction in those things. If that's, y'all are giggling. I must have said something really funny.
No, we just laugh a lot.
So I don't have to be funny. That's even better. I've got a higher chance of winning here. No, so she was the small groups director. I was the Next Steps pastor, and she ran all the small groups, and she just killed it. She's a big part of all these experiences early on.
So like walk us through like the shift. I mean, you spent, you did seminary, you got this degree in counseling and whatever, all the other stuff, but you're leading in a predominant model, but at some point, like something shifts and it's like, you can't keep doing things that we've always done. Like, what was that shift into embracing, not that you didn't want to make disciples, but like embracing this radical way of multiplying disciples?
Golly, that's such a big question. As a part of a tradition, a denomination that was really heavy on tradition, it was Reformed Presbyterian, is kind of where I found a heartbeat for Jesus, not just a heartbeat for church. And so I go through that process, and you come out of that really eager to get the theology right, because that's what we're trained to do, be theological teachers, and then, kind of protectors of sound theology, particularly in those kind of environments. And so, but I also cared about our generation being effective in sharing the gospel around the world. I had that heart connection, which was apparently was not completely shared throughout, as high as a priority. And I remember seeing one of these statistics that's, said, here's the boomer generation, here's the buster generation, and then here's your generation, and here's the trend. And it's like, why? I know. And so then it creates a crisis in your head, and you start asking, what's the problem? Why is this happening? Like, what systemically is happening? You can't blame culture. Everything does rise and fall a lot, if not all, on leadership. And if I'm one of those leaders in this generation, I owned that problem, which makes you go listen to people that are outside of your echo, chamber. And for me, it was reading Neil Cole. It was exposing myself to innovators like Hugh Halter back in the day, and Lance Ford. And they really irritated me big time, because they made me like tear down some pillars that were propping up my theological house, and having to replace pillars. And it was difficult, because that had severe implications for how I would have to pursue, like, anyway, I mean, I don't want to get too far into that, but that just kept creating a wedge between the system I was in and the commitments that I had made. And I just had the ability, because of Dan Sutherland's leadership at Westside, just gave us a lot of freedom to innovate, to do kind of a skunk work kind of deal with disciple making, and just pursue Jesus into that reality. And that reality was able to evolve rather significantly into some theology, as you've already started to talk about, some strategy. And all that started when Jesus basically said, I brought you here to this church and in this situation for this very reason, for you to figure out multiplication. And kind of the message was either do it or go sell cars.
Which are both very holy work.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Yeah.
Will you tell the story of, this is, I think embodies like sort of the shift of the one where you're sitting in the driveway and you're like, oh, I got to go back out and coach this guy, or, sit with this family.
Oh, absolutely.
One of your disciples is like, I'm going to jump in and do it.
This may be something that other people have more common, but to me, this was an epiphany type of moment. As a pastor, you're kind of on call to help people do the God thing for themselves and for others. And so I had done a long day at work, and I'd just gotten home, pulling into the driveway, hit the button for the garage door to go up, and I'm feeling, the relaxation and looking forward to whatever's ahead. Get a call from one of the guys in my discipleship group. This is the very first Disciples Made group. And I'm like, oh no, I know this guy. And he only calls if there's a problem. He says, one of my buddies, he just called me, and his wife just asked for a divorce. So I put my car in reverse, and I start to back out, and I'm thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to call Carol, and I'll tell how long I'll be, whatever. And instead of saying, I need you to meet me to do blank and blank, he says, I'm thinking of doing this with him. What do you think?
Chills. I love this story.
I mean, I've got the hair on my arm is standing up too, because I remember it's like, is this okay? This is cheating, right? It's like somebody had to let me feel what it felt like to become a coach, because I certainly couldn't have activated that on my own. But once I got there, it's like when you're water skiing, right? There's this moment of trauma for the first few seconds when the boat goes into gear, that you're just like, well, I get up. But when you're on top of the water, it's like, this is great. Like, who would allow themselves to go back down into the water once you've hit a phase where you've equipped folks enough to where you're their friend and their coach, not, they're not your children anymore.
Yeah.
They're teenagers that are saying, Dad, I want to do it this way, or they're young adults. So yeah, that's that story. It's huge for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that, maybe that really encompasses or highlights, that's the great picture of what we're talking about, of what coaching in general is on many levels. We've been kind of talking about that distinction, at least in our world. We call it startup coaching, like getting people going in their early disciple making journey. And then our general language for kind of continued on relationships, we call ongoing coaching. And there's some strategies that come with that in our ecosystem.
It's a helpful distinction. Yeah.
But I think what you're describing is really, it's both, that posture of you can do it, we can help, which you're right, man. It's if you come out of leadership in a different world of church, it is a foreign language, so I can imagine, where you're at with that. Has that, basically that's been what your ministry has been since? Is that
ever
really?
Since?
Yeah. All right.
Like,
Well,
once you taste that, you don't go back. It's like if you've been eating cardboard all your life and you finally get a Hershey bar, you're like, I'm not going back. It's, I don't know.
Were you about to ask something else?
No, just kind of getting more in the weeds of fleshing that out for what you guys do when you think of maybe in that ongoing coaching paradigm in our brain. Like, what are some major rhythms that you live into, pillars that you kind of stand on when you think of what coaching is in those environments?
Well, I kind of got my start on this with adult learning theory. Like that was very supportive.
Yeah.
We got this big question: why don't people serve more? Why don't people volunteer more? Why don't people blank 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 blank? And typically, people only want to learn things they absolutely need to learn. I was like, okay, well then let me invite them into a situation where they need coaching, right? Like jump yourself into, like Peter and, when Jesus goes up to Peter and James and John and all of them, he didn't equip them for a year before going out. He's like, drop your nets right now and let's go make disciples. Let's go make fishers of men. And they're like, well, I'm not equipped. I need a 3-year training plan. Like, no, we're going to kind of do this as we go. Yep. And so, he threw them into a situation where they were fully dependent upon him. And he invited them into that. And I was like, well, take note of how Jesus did this, because that's probably wise, right? So that's kind of what I did when I wouldn't disciple people unless they jumped in.
Yeah.
Because it was only when they jumped in to serve others, even as unequipped as they were, they needed the coaching. And they needed the coaching, not for ideas shaping. They needed the coaching to actually make a difference in the lives of others. And so to me, that's like big shift number one is don't invest in people that aren't investing in others.
Yeah, that's so good. Dude, I have a lot of conversations with people around the city who are just wrestling with this stuff, who feel, at least, even if they can't articulate it, this sense of, I want to be more purposeful. I want to live a life with purpose, and I want to be mission focused. And a lot of times, as they're coming from maybe different church expressions or maybe just wandering, we have those conversations, and a lot of questions come around, like basically, how am I going to get my own fill, my own community? And I have enough of those conversations that, just to be totally honest, sometimes it gets annoying. And that's a good, valid question, but like sometimes if people harp on that too much, I'm just kind of like, all right, dude, but even just the way that you're phrasing this, of the necessity of like the idea that, okay, if you really go all in on this, that actually is a really good question, because you're going to be desperate for help. You're going to be desperate for assistance, might be the better word. Like if you're actually going to do this, you need a little bit of structure around it. So you're asking the right questions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just helpful for me, because I do get a little frustrated with it. It's the same questions every time, because we don't necessarily provide tons of programming to help you have community. What we want to do is create structure to help you thrive, and there's some community that comes with that in our coaching groups. I don't know if you have anything to add with that, Brian, but like I think that's just a really helpful thing. Is like if you're trying to coach in the way that we're talking about coaching, people who don't really want to jump in, they more want to just kind of receive, then that, yeah, you're automatically starting from a point that's different than when you're in your driveway and getting that
Yeah.
call, because you're not going to have those conversations.
Yeah, two major thoughts to that, Cory, like super big, that make the heart pound super heavy. One, you can just look at the example of Jesus in the Gospels, and the proportion of time he gives to the people that are serving others is exceptionally high.
Yeah.
The time that he gives to people that are looking for something is relatively low. He doesn't turn people in need down. He'll talk to the woman who touched the hem of his garment, all these other things. He's not cold. But he just realizes that he's there for a purpose, and that is to plant the seeds of the kingdom in people in a multiplicative fashion.
That's right.
Because that's the only way to take over the world. And so he insisted, like, he turned his face like flint toward Jerusalem to die for our sins. Yes, he did. He also turned his face like flint toward multiplication.
Yep.
And he had to set boundaries in those things. So that's thought one. I just want to model what Jesus did, because if he set the best way, then that's the best way to go. Even if it goes against some of the systems and structures that surround us. Like, we are in the pool of other systems and structures, which is why people can't seem to understand this. And I've got theories and ideas as to what the blocking thoughts are, that keep them from doing that. But thought two, if their pursuit is community, then that's never going to end in meaning. It'll end in support, but it'll never end in meaning.
Yeah.
The best community is discovered by people that are together on mission.
Yep.
Community for community's sake usually ends up imploding on itself at some point. Jesus never said, "Hey guys, let's get together on a daily basis. We'll go down to the local, Capernaum Bucks, and we'll get a latte and study the Torah." I mean, he never invited them to community. He invited them to a mission, and a powerful, powerful community made of zealots and Jews and, all the same place.
Yeah. That's so good.
All right. So I'm going to shift us real quick, because we don't have like a ton of time to hit all of the beautiful stuff you're saying. But what are like tools, resources, like what are the things that come to mind, practical ways that you're like, over the years I've discovered like this stuff seems to really help as I develop a coach, or as I think about developing a coach that's coaching people? Like, what are the things? Is it their character? Is it a tool that you're like that's always coming up?
Yeah. Cory gave I love the framework of startup coaching and ongoing coaching. One is, in order to be someone who's truly effectively discipling someone else, there's probably some structure and processes to go through that. So we're kind of coming from a similar page, and usually that's a longer duration thing, more involved thing for a period of time. How all this started for me was creating a thing called Leaders Made and Followers Made and Leaders Made. These are, 9-month-long cohorts at the top. And there's a lot of things you're doing together. You're processing some books. You're exercising spiritual habits of Bible reading, journaling, accountability, prayer, serving, personal calling, support, like feedback on all those kind of things. So there's all this structure in place that helps get people from wherever they are to a solid level of spiritual influencing. And if they get there, and I use those experiences. I just wrapped up my 15th Leaders Made yesterday morning. Right. And so assuming that there's 12 to 13 people in each one of those groups, that's an awful lot of people that have gone from, a measure of commitment to Jesus to becoming a spiritual influencer. And I use those things to identify who are the people that I want to invest more in ongoing as they coach others. So it's kind of like a opportunity to filter out and see who God puts a light bulb over in the midst of those on that. So to me, the goal in those startup coaching situations is to develop character and calling, like get people to the point where their calling is such that they can say things like, and their character is such that, follow me as I follow Christ. At some point we can only say follow Christ, and I'll try to do that too. But at some point you can say, follow me as I follow Christ. That's what we're aiming for character and calling in those startup coaching things. But then after that, it's like, okay, well, how do you keep leveling yourself up in character and calling. Like, do you have your own 360-degree circle? Do you have mentors? Do you have peers? And do you have apprentices? Because if you've got that, you're going to be okay. All you need is those. Like for me, I would fill, for ongoing coaching, I would fill a mentor role for those folks.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd encourage them, don't let me be your only mentor. I got strengths and weaknesses like everybody else. So will other mentors. And so that's basically the process I go through. I don't know if that's the question that you're asking specifically, but I can tell you what I do in those seasons, or in those relationships.
Yeah, do that.
Please do.
Let's do that.
That's nice. Yeah, that.
If there is a repeated, y'all are cracking yourselves up, and I love it.
It's hilarious. I don't know. There you go.
So like mentoring often seems to be one of these. It has to be monthly. It has to, or scheduled. It has to be formal. There has to be a book. There has to be a plan. And I think that there's a degree to that in the more startup that is required. Or if you're in a common ministry together, the touch points are there. Whatever that frequency is, I start it. Like if I'm going to have an hour with you, then I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes just asking about you personally. How's family? How's the marriage? How are the kids? And then I'm going to turn it to, how do you like the job? Particularly like when you talked about Bree, when Bree was on the team that I led, it all started, how are you and Ryan? How are the kids? How's Ava? And then I just wanted to hear about her, and I wanted her to know that I cared more about her as a person than as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this is more supervisory coaching, but I think there's some translatable stuff.
Yeah.
Then it would go into, how are you enjoying your job? Am I supporting you properly? You getting the type of encouragement? Is there anything you need from me to thrive in your role? And then let's look at the rocks that we've established for this quarter. How are you doing? What kind of support do you need to succeed? And then give them like a up to date. Here's kind of where you are. Like, I always have this conviction that if they find out that they're behind on a formal annual review, then you missed 12 opportunities prior to that annual review to let them know where they are so that they could course correct live instead of at the end of the year.
Let me ask you this. What did you learn from your biggest mistake in trying to be a good coach? Mm-hmm. Like you're trying to be a good coach and it's like, this one did not go well. Mm-hmm. Like didn't develop into a coach that could coach others, or I thought this person was going to be an amazing coach, or maybe it's just a disciple that you're like, you
don't have to use full names. You can be like Brian J or B Johnson. You don't have to say like a full
B / use Twitter handle or something like that.
Yeah. So you don't have to be specific.
It's an X handle now, I guess. I would say early on, and this speaks more to my insecurities and personality type, perhaps, than coaching acumen, although they're related, is I really wanted to be their friend. I wanted them to like me a lot. And I still want that. But I also want to increase the value of their life, which requires me to play more of an accountability type role, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And so when I started to add those in, and I saw that as actually a better investment into them than just being someone that supported and approved them, that became the new standard for me. That usually helped. Most of those relationships go very well. I could still probably be naive. I'd probably do a little more inspection than just, affirmation and support and trusting kind of their report, because it's people's, instinct to give me the best report possible. And if that's my only data points, I'm probably going to have a rose-colored perspective of what's going on. I only had 2 reports not turn out well. And one was somebody that I did not get to hire. I just was given the opportunity, or told, you're going to start supervising this individual. And they did not share the same agenda. They had a very different strategy for how things should run. And so it was peaceful, but didn't go well. The other guy was on his way out, I think. So I can't really know how I would have done that better. I haven't thought about it, but
So let me go back to the the main, this is my last question.
Yep.
You might have more, but
Yes.
coach disciple makers to set and pursue their God-given goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that's the observation number 11. Coach disciple makers to set and pursue their God-given goals. So just in light of Disciples Made, the work that you're doing there, in light of your own just personal mission in your neighborhood, in light of the fact that there are just a bunch of ordinary people listening to this as well, as you hear that phrase, like kind of last word as you speak over us, like what comes to mind? How important is this idea, coach disciple makers to set and pursue their God-given goals?
Yeah, I mean, that's I would call that, if not a core statement or the core statement, it's close to the core statement of what the posture of a coach should be. So I'm leaving the idea that this might be an employee. Let's take that conversation and put it over here.
Mm-hmm.
The job of a coach is to ensure that you're more dependent upon the Spirit of God than you are the coach, first of all. And so then the question is, then what's the Spirit teaching you? You know, as you engage Scripture in your own accountability. I don't want to be your accountability. I want to help people that are already set up in their own lives with accountability structures to get to the next level. And if you're not doing all those, I'm not going to be that for you. Like, you're an adult now, figure that piece out. I'll help you figure it out if you need, but I'm not gonna be that for you. I have that for myself, and we all need that for ourselves. And so, what are you hearing from God? What is He asking of you? And then just to give my filter on whether or not I think they're hearing properly, or hearing big enough, or not hearing big enough, or what. So,
Hey, there's Wendy. She's coming in on the next podcast.
hey, Wendy.
Hi, Brian. Okay, bye. Let me figure out how to get out of here. Leave.
A few minutes.
That is called a teaser.
Yeah.
For next week. We should.
That's right.
That's so great. Yeah, I mean, as kind of my final thought / question with that, Brian, is like, I'm thinking of my last coaching group that I was a part of. You know, so we're all practitioners, we're leaders, we're hub director, all those things. But I mean, we're in coaching relationships because we need it. And one of the people in our group, so we're basically at 3 households that kind of represent the coaching group that I'm a part of, and one of the basically I will statement at the end, because we try to create real practical, like, what's our next steps out of this. Yeah. And they were at a point to invite a handful of people into a discovery Bible study setting in their home, and they've already done so many relational work. And it was so funny talking to him. He was like, I would not have done that, even though the time was now, unless that became basically a very Holy Spirit revealed goal that needed to be set. Like, there needed to be a sense of, I intend to join God where He's at work. And sometimes we can be hesitant, even if we're going in that direction, we can be hesitant without some specificity. And so that was so fun and then literally the following week they had a group that got started that's meeting in their home, you know. So it was so fun to see that. I had a very specific goal too, of getting some guys together at a fire pit that's actually happening tonight, because that same thing, it's like, all right, just sometimes you just got to do it. You got to like step into it, and coaching really helps that. It's not a dependent, like our coaching relationship that I'm part of. It's not somebody has all the answers leading you, helping facilitate so that we can hear from God, so we can step into whatever He has for us. So, I just appreciate you modeling that over the years, brother, and the fruit that we're seeing in your world, bro. So thank you for your wisdom, my friend, Papa Phipps.
It's always a joy to hang with you guys.
Yeah.
I guess I better start beating the door down now if I want to get back on in the next 4 years.
Or you just have the link that you can jump on whenever.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. And I would say too, just a reminder real quick. I think you could go to fullyalive.com as well. I mean, you can download the app, and you should do that. But if you want to pursue more, check out fullyalive.com, especially those of you. This is my plug personally. For those of you that are in predominant models that are curious about what we do, and you're curious about how to take the first steps within that model, all of the Disciples Made resources will help you begin to make those shifts.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, I think that they live equally as well outside the predominant model, but they make sense for people that are used to not all of disciples made, but a few of those like followers made, leaders made, like they're programized enough that people can step into them and go, oh, this feels safe. This feels, like our missionary pathway, even some of like the learning ways that we do that modeled off of what we learned from DM. So check that out. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just something you said triggered this thought. People ask me regularly, what's the relationship between Disciples Made and Kansas City Underground? And then the follow-up question is, why aren't y'all the same organization? And my answer to that is we kind of work off the same operating system, the IDE, to get these things done. But my call is to the local church still, the local congregation. God has seared that into my heart over the decades. And so I just want people to hear, like, there's work to be done in the local congregation. There's pioneering to be done in the harvest. And that, to me, that's God put a Pauline heart in y'all and put a Petra, Peter heart in mine. I stay with the Jews. You go to, the places not been. And so when you say that about Fully Alive being geared for the church, it's like we're not, and no one here is anti-established church, but we have different degrees of tolerance of that. And I have a very high tolerance simply because I want to help people not abandon and blow up those models, but how do we start to tweak them to accomplish similar things with bigger and better results? And so that's kind of my heart. I just want people to hear that piece.
That's so good. And then another overflow of that is that so many of our original missionary leaders came out of what y'all would do with Leaders Made and everything. So like it stirs people's heart, and sometimes it even leads to more harvest work. And so, but that's such a good word, man. And I'm grateful for your role in the church and the city, brother. So
amen.
Let's keep rolling.
Thanks for being with us, Brian. Bye.
Cheers.